Question 1. Define cascade in NHibernate mapping file. Answer. Cascade. Enable operations to cascade to child entities. Cascade equals all, none, save, update, delete, all, delete, orphan, all. When an object is save/update/delete, check the associations and save/update/delete all objects found. None. Do not do any cascades. Let user handles them by themselves. Save, update. When the object is saved/updated, check the associations and save/update any object that require it. Delete. When the object is deleted, delete all the objects in the association. All, delete, orphan. When an object is save/update/delete, check the associations and save/update/delete all objects found. In addition to this, when an object is removed from the association and not associated with another object, delete the orphan object also. Question 2. Explain about NHibernate mapping files. Answer. Mapping files form core of any database. These files contain field-to-field mapping. Usually this mapping occurs between classes and attributes. Sample mapping file. XML version equals 1.0 encoding equals UTF-8. Hibernate mapping XMLNS equals URN NHibernate mapping 2.2. Assembly equals NHibernate sample. Namespace equals NHibernate sample.sample. Class name equals first sample. ID name equals ID. Generator class equals native ID. Property name equals name. Property name equals category class. /Hibernate mapping. No need to specify column name if database column name is same as property. Property name equals name, column equals database column name. Also, right-click on first sample.hbm.xml. Select properties and change the build action to embedded resource. The mapping file will now be a part of the assembly. Question 3. How do you switch between relational databases without code changes? Answer. By using Hibernate SQL dialects, we can switch databases. Hibernate will generate appropriate HQL queries based on the dialect defined. Question 4. What is difference between Session.Get and Session.Load? Answer. Both Session.Get and Session.Load method create a persistent object by loading the required object from the database. But if there was not an object in database, then load method throws an exception whereas get method returns null. Question 5. How to configure NHibernate? Answer. Configuration files and mapping files hbm.xml are used by configuration class to create the session factory, which in turn creates the session instance. Session instance are primary interface for persistence service. Config file is used to specify connection details and mapping files used to map persistent objects to a relational database. It is best practice to store each object in an individual mapping file. Session factory is an Hibernate concept of a single data store and is thread safe so that many threads can access it concurrently. Session factory is usually built only once at startup. Question 6. What is NHibernate.Burrow? Answer. Burrow is a lightweight middleware developed to support net applications using NHibernate. May be also referred as NH in this article as ORM framework. Using ASP.NET with NHibernate could be a challenge because of the fact that NHibernate is a stateful environment while ASP.NET is a stateless framework. Burrow can help solve this conflict by providing advanced and smart session/transaction management and other facilitates. Question 7. What's the major benefits offered by NHibernate.Burrow? Answer. Burrow conversation with which you can easily write business transaction. Generic DAO with which session can be seldom touched most of the time. Stateful field attributes with which marked fields of ASP.NET user control and page will be stateful over multiple HTTP requests. It helps user controls or pages remember entity without causing lazy load exception. Multiple databases support multiple databases becomes easy. You don't need a session factory path. You simply give Burrow an entity type, and Burrow will find the right session for you. If you are using generic DAO, the multiple DB support can be very transparent. Your code does not need to know there are multiple databases. Question 8. How do I learn more about NHibernate.Burrow? Answer. Introduction. A brief introduction. Get started tells how to set up the Burrow framework. Burrow conversation explained gives more detail in long conversation. Stateful field attributes explains how Burrow.WebUtil attributes can simplify states maintenance for ASP.NET controls and pages. Question 9. Why did I get this cannot find entity with ID X error with my entity field after I deleted it? Answer: that's because by default entity field is using Session.Load to load the entity for you. If you delete the entity, you need to reset that field to null. If you want to save this trouble, you can use entity field deletion safe. Instead, it's basically the same except that it's using Session.Get. Question 10. How do I store data in HTTP session? Answer: you might already know that you cannot store entity in HTTP session in an open session preview mode, which is what NHibernate.borrow is using most of the cases. Instead, you can store entity ID in session and load the entity with ID every time you use it. Thanks to NHibernate's cache, this won't bring any performance issue to your system. Question 11. How do I do unit test under NHibernate.borrow? Answer follows. Set up public void initialize new borrow framework init workspace tear down public void close new borrow framework.close workspace, or you can use NHibernate.borrow.testutil.test base as your NUnit unit test base class and override tear down and setup method to add your own tear down and setup logic. Question 12. Is NHibernate.borrow compatible with Ajax? Answer: NHibernate.borrow is compatible with Ajax.asp.NET, the Ajax framework provided by Microsoft. Question 13. Why I couldn't finish a long conversation in an update panel in an Ajax.asp.NET project? Answer: if you keep getting a JavaScript alert window giving the error message sys.webforms.pageRequestManager parser error exception, the message received from the server could not be parsed. Common causes for this error: when the response is modified by calls to response.write, response filters, HTTP modules, or server trace is enabled. You need to add the following setting into uSystem.web section in your web.config. Pages enable view state MAC equals false, view state encryption mode equals never.